From the streets of Chicago to the headlines of the world, you are now tuned into the rhythm of real thought. This is the Daily Mix. 15 minutes of uncut perspective starts right now.
All right, welcome everybody to the Daily Mix. I'm your host, Omari Jahi. And today we're getting ready to get real about why we think the way we do. We like to tell ourselves that we are seekers of truth, and we look at the facts and let the chips fall where they may. But if we're being honest, most of the time, we aren't looking for the truth. We're not looking for the truth at all. We're looking for agreement. We're looking for someone to tell us that we're right all along and that our side is the smart one and that our world view don't need to change. But today we're talking about where our emotions and the human brain prefers a comfortable lie over an uncomfortable truth, and how that's making us more divided and more stuck than ever. A profound social relationship example of this is the phenomenon of the silent divorce. To give you an example, this happens when a long-term couple or even close family members actually choose to ignore a massive rift in their relationship to keep up the appearance of peace. Here's how the brain operates. In this scenario, the hard reality might be we have completely grown apart. We no longer share the same values. There is zero intimacy left. And we are essentially roommates who resent one another. And in fact, to face this truth head on is terrifying for the brain. It means admitting a massive investment of time and energy failed. It triggers a wave of survival fears. Will I end up alone? See, these are thought process that we have in our minds while we're going through this. How will we split our friends? What will people say? Can I afford to live on my own? Well, because the brain hates uncertainties and views social rejections or isolation as a physical threat, it looks for like an emergency exit to avoid the pain of that truth. The couple kind of adopts a comfortable lie. We're just going through a rough patch. We say this all the time. Yeah, we're going through a rough patch. Every couple goes through this, after a year or two or whatever. It's fine. We don't need to talk about the big argument we had last year. It's better to just leave the past in the past, right? This lie acts like an emotional painkiller. It allows the couple to sit at dinners or go to family parties and post happy photos on social media. It protects their immediate comfort by maintaining the status quo. Everything's cool. Everything looks cool, so that means everything's cool, right? Not really, but that's what happens. We are more divided because the elephant in the room is never addressed. And how we really feel about one another is hidden. And then it eventually dies. Those feelings die. To protect the lie, both people have to build emotional walls instead of a united front. The relationship splits into two distinct violent factions. Every minor interaction becomes a potential war. You know, bombs can just start flying at any given moment. A disagreement about who forgot to buy milk isn't actually about milk. You know, it's really about an outlet for those 5 years of unpressed or unexpressed, I should say, resentment. Because we can't talk to each other, these feelings, they turn inward. We vent to our separate friends and our groups and family members. Now we creating teams. His team, her team. Suddenly a private relationship issue divides an entire social group, family, friends, making the gap between the couple even wider. By prioritizing arguments or pretending everything is fine over the truth, admitting things are really fine, they broken. Healing is impossible. You cannot fix a problem you refuse to name. I want to say that again. You cannot fix a problem you refuse to name it. If you can't admit that you have a problem and that you're having a problem, how in the hell you think you finna fix something that you won't even admit you got? And this brings me to the mind of addictions. You know, we can be addicted to so many different things. And I'm going off a little bit, but I'm coming back to the subject. But you know, when you have an addiction, let's say it's drugs, alcohol, sex, food addiction, whatever the addiction is, there's no way you're going to be able to begin to solve it or fight against that addiction until the person with the addiction admits that they have the addiction. And most times people with addiction, they say, I'm straight. I can stop drinking anytime I want to. I can stop getting high. I'm not an addict. I'm good. I'm cool. I'm good. They say, as long as they say I'm good and they don't want to admit that there's a problem there, then that problem will never be solved. And this is why couples become paralyzed in a state of chronic low-grade unhappiness. They spend years, sometimes decades, walking on eggshells, suffocating their own personal growth and the growth of the relationship. They are stuck in a prison of their own making. We become too afraid to do the hard work of going to therapy and facing the truth together, but too afraid to separate. By choosing the short-term comfort of the lie, we sentence ourselves to the long-term torment of a dead relationship. We stay together, but we have never been further apart. Now, this brings me to a thought. What about children? What if we have children in this relationship or in this marriage or whatever? If children are involved, are couples, whether they're married or not, obligated to stay in that relationship for the stability of the children? That's a great question, isn't it? There's no legal obligation for couples to stay together simply because they have children, but the moral and developmental obligation to provide stability is very real for those children. It's very real. The modern consensus among children development experts shift the focus away from the structure of the relationship, whether the parents live under the same roof or not, and put it entirely on the quality of the environment. If a relationship is simply low conflict, meaning that y'all ain't trying to kill each other, y'all ain't cussing each other out every time you see each other and things like that. If it's low conflict or has grown emotionally distant, y'all just don't, it ain't like you pass each other like ships in the night. Nobody says good morning. Nobody says hello. No, we're not talking to each other. We ain't fighting. I mean, and if we are fighting, if it's just a low thing, if it's low conflict and we're not emotionally distant, psychologists call that a good enough marriage. You batting 1,000 if you can, even though you might have some challenges, you can still associate with each other. You can still have a peaceful conversation. Then that's a pretty good marriage. But research suggests it is generally better for the children if the parents stay together. I'm gonna say that again. Research has developed that and come to the conclusion that it is better for the children if the parents stay together. Children thrive on predictability, routine, and economic security. A parental split often causes a drop in household income, changes in school, and the stress of moving between the two homes. Staying together through a dry or difficult spell teaches children that commitment isn't based solely on temporary feelings. I'm going to say that again. You're teaching children that just because you feel a certain way at this moment, that don't mean you might not feel like that tomorrow or next week or in a couple of days. Those feelings might kind of dissipate. Provided that you guys are actively working to respect each other. If the relationship is marked by chronic high conflict, hostility, emotional abuse, or physical violence, staying together is domestically worse for the children than a healthy separation. Children are like emotional sponges. Growing up in a house filled with tension, screaming matches, or icy silences put the child in a nervous system into a chronic state of fight or flight. Parents are a child's first definition of love and relationship dynamics. If children watch their parents treat each other with contempt or resentment daily, they normalize that behavior and are highly likely to repeat those toxic patterns in their own adult relationships. What matters most to a child? Long-term health isn't whether their parents are romantically involved, but how well the parents co-parent. A split only brings stability if the conflict stops after the breakup. See, a lot of people think, well, okay, we're having conflict, so maybe we should split up and this, and that, another. But that doesn't mean that the child is okay now, because even after you split up, if whenever you come together, there's some conflict, the problem still exists. The child is still being damaged by that and have to deal with all that psychology and psychological, emotional trauma. If the toxicity and fighting continues across two different households via text or whether it's a custody battle, the child gets the worst of the both worlds. The traumas of the breakup and the ongoing stress of the conflict, they suffer from that. Couples are not obligated to stay in a romantic relationship for the kids, but they are absolutely obligated to minimize conflict and maximize stability for them. Sometimes the most mature, protective things two parents can do for their child and the stability of their children is to dismantle a broken marriage and replace it with healthy, respectful, and cooperative co-parenting and partnership. Now, my thing is this. If you can be mature enough to co-parent and be cooperative, then why can't you do that under the same roof? And see, that's what's better for the child. Why break up and then be good co-parents? Just something to think about. If you have that maturity, stay together. If you got to be in separate rooms, separate bedrooms, that's even better for the child than you guys separating and making the child go from separate houses. This ties heavily into the theme we've been exploring. It begs a final question. Are parents who stay in high conflict relationships for the stability of the kids actually choosing a comfortable lie over an uncomfortable truth? So I got some homework for you guys for the day. Go find your baby mama or your baby daddy and just listen to their truth until you can at least explain it back to them. And then vice versa. They listen to you and your truth, how you feel and what your thoughts are about the relationship and what happened and this and that and another. You don't have to agree with them, but you do have to listen and try to understand where they are coming from by asking questions for clarity. Let's see if we can value their reality over our validation for just one day. Hey, thanks for joining me today on the Daily Mix. I'm your host, Amari Jahi, and I'll catch you tomorrow on the Mix.
Take care of your mind, take care of your health, and we'll be back in the mix tomorrow at 12 noon. Till then, peace out.